This is another maximum of law, and this is the definition for it. A principle of law universally admitted as being a correct statement of the law. That's the actual definition of a maximum of law. And there's several of them that apply in this particular case. Truth is expressed in the form of an affidavit. And that form that was left on his front door was an affidavit. And unless it's rebutted, it stands as truth. All right? Now the agent has left this form on the door. An unrebutted affidavit stands as truth in commerce, and that's another maximum of law. All right, and here now is the Bible references for it. Affidavit is the highest form of truth. He who does not deny admits. Silence in this particular situation is an acknowledgement that what I have on my property is a public nuisance. You have to speak to this situation. All right, now unrebutted affidavit becomes a judgment in commerce, and that's exactly what's on that affidavit, is the judgment written at the bottom. It even goes as far as to say that you're voluntarily acknowledging that you're not going to appeal the case. So guess what happens when you go? If you go before the administrative judge and you say, I'm going to appeal it, and he says, fine, go right ahead, and you go to the appeals court and you haven't rebutted the affidavit that was left, guess what? You're acknowledging I'm not going to appeal it. So why are you standing before the appeals court? You expect him to reverse that which you've already said you wouldn't do? Kind of get an idea of where all this comes from. Alabama Code 115 and 116 is interesting, because 115 says that a violation of the Code of Alabama is a public violation. In other words, if you violate any of the code, you're committing a public offense. But if the money goes into the coffers of the city, county, or state government, it is not a public offense. And that's what 116 says. So in this case, the city has made an accusation and the money's going to go into their coffers. It's not a public offense. It is a contractual situation between you and that corporate body of the city. And that's what, and by omission, this, you have to read those two and to understand what is being said, because they don't, in a positive way, say it. They don't say it, and they define the two parameters, and you have to understand what's in between the sheets there. So that's what 115 is. This is just running through several more of these. This is a maximum of law in commerce. For any matter to be resolved, it's got to be expressed. Well, there's a written format from the city. You have to rebut or express yours in similar fashion. You can't go before them orally. In what manner did the government express itself? Of course, it put that affidavit on that scale, and there was an oral rebuttal. Of course, we know what weight that has, none. The property owner then puts in an affidavit that's notarized. It has more weight than the city's, and of course the scale tips in his view. Now, this is the definition of a notary. A notary is a public official who notarizes legal documents and can administer and take oaths and affirmations. That's the purpose of a notary. Why notarize? Personal documents which originate from another jurisdiction, your jurisdiction is private, must be notarized. Now here is why you have private jurisdiction. Goes right back to the chart, which you haven't really seen. Remember, we said in the 1700s there's no king but King Jesus. That authority then from that earthly king devolved into us, and we have private jurisdiction. Colossians 1:13 says that God the Father has placed me under the jurisdictional authority of the love of His Son. And my jurisdiction is private. My home is my castle. The officer of the state cannot enter it. I am king in my jurisdiction. And when I submit a document into the public jurisdiction, it's got to be notarized by an officer of the public domain or jurisdiction in order for it to take legal effect. And that's a reflection of all of this that we're not taught when we come into the system. And by the way, lawyers don't have a clue about any of this stuff. So next, Personal documents which originate from another jurisdiction must be notarized, and that's just a restatement of the same. Before they can be officially used as or recorded, they've got to be notarized before they can take legal effect. Now that's the actual definition if you go out and look it up for a notary. So they're letting you know that you've got in order for it to take effect in the court system, it's got to be notarized, or before you put it on public record, you need to have it notarized. So what has happened thus far? Well, the affidavit was left on the front door of a private property owner. Next, let's see, it stands as truth in commerce. Then it stands as judgment in commerce, this affidavit. And the city's affidavit has not been rebutted. And here now are more photographs of this guy's property. These are all taken by the code enforcement officer. And he was, let's see, accused, let's see, this was taken on June the 19th of 2011. Let's see, he appears on June the 25th before the city council and makes an oral rebuttal of jurisdictional authority. Of course, that went right over everybody's head. They don't understand jurisdiction at all. And they just said, you mean you're not in the city? You know, he wasn't referring, jurisdiction does not refer to territorial jurisdiction. You know, my private jurisdiction, I have a border around me. You can actually get nose to nose, and you have trespassed on me. So I have trespass means many things. And my private property begins with the fact that I have the right to breathe. That's the very first aspect of my private property. Okay, now his words have no effect. The agent's written statement stands as truth. August the 11th, he's arrested and set free on bond. Let's see, John Doe, sends a notarized letter to the city requesting specific things. And we got together and actually put these letters together. Now, there are certain things that we would change now after having looked at all this and what has happened to other people. Let's see, more than 1 month before the first hearing is scheduled, he sends all of these letters in requesting this information. And this, again, goes back to Matthew 5:25. Who you are is the very first thing. If you read pleadings from a lawyer, it'll start out and says, now comes so-and-so. But it doesn't define who comes. So if you allow that to stand, the judge can assume that you're a person and extend to you privileges that of a corporation, not rights that are unalienable, not even rights that are ascribed in the Constitution. It's up to him to decide. Okay, comes now, and you sign your name. Here, one of the people, small p, I'm not a capital P, I'm not a representative of a state government in Washington, D.C. I am a resident, and that's the wrong word, I'm actually a man living on the land in the Republic, Alabama, and I am claiming all rights known or unknown, and I don't waive not one of them. That's the very first statement about who I am. Now, I have no known or unknown contract, license, franchise, or any other written or oral agreement of any type which in any way abrogates, violates, disparages, handicaps, or limits my unalienable rights affirmed in, but not limited to, the Constitution of the United States of America and the Republic, Alabama. Now, the other day I was asked, why is it the Republic, Alabama? Because the Constitution says every state in the Union shall be a republic. We are not a democracy. So that's why it says Republic, Alabama. Now, in this instance, the judge would have to come forward and prove that I have a license or a contract that in some way violates those rights. Now, in the Code of Alabama, 119 says that the code shall not affect a right, remedy, or defense. Here now I'm saying I'm a man with a living soul, living on the land republic, and the Code of Alabama does not affect me because I'm in that republic. And I'm saying, you come forward, judge, and show me any one of the agreements that I have with the state, city, or county that violates those rights granted to me by the code, by the Creator, and how the code now is affecting that. So that's establishing who I am, and this puts me back into common law so I can protect my rights.